Hey to all my men out there. Today we're going to be tackling the subject of why do some men outperform others in the bedroom? And perhaps you think, oh, it's because that guy is just luckier than me, or that guy has some specific skill that I just don't have. But I'm here to tell you, it's neither of those things. In my 20 plus years of treating men in this exact same area, I'm here to tell you it's actually due to the coordination and strength of a hidden group of muscles located deep inside of your pelvis. So in this video, we're going to talk about the specific exercises that you can do to enhance your performance in the bedroom and what can happen in the long-term consequences if you don't. So what are these hidden secret muscles? Well, they're known as your pelvic floor. Now, these muscles are a group of 14 muscles located deep inside of your pelvis that have attachments to your tailbone, to your sit bones, as well as your pubic bone. And these muscles don't work by themselves. You see, your pelvic floor is part of your core, and your core is actually comprised of 3 other muscle groups: your abdominal muscles, your low back muscles, as well as your diaphragm. And these muscles, including your pelvic floor, really work as a team to really get the job done in terms of your sexual function. So we're gonna go through 4 exercises that are really going to target specifically all of these muscles so that you can hit a home run in the bedroom. Number 1, the Kegel exercise. Now this exercise is really the foundation of locating your pelvic floor and really working those muscles that are super important for your sexual performance. I know what you guys might be thinking. I've heard of these exercises before. I think it's what women do after they've had a baby and they're trying to get back their bladder control. And yeah, you're right. But what people don't realize is that men have pelvic floors too. And if those pelvic floor muscles are not coordinated and strong, then you're going to have issues with erections, possible premature ejaculation, and also just pure power for having an orgasm. And I also know what you might be thinking. Hey, I know how to do those exercises, but guess what? Research shows that 30 to 40% of people do not do these exercises correctly. So let's go ahead and start by lying on the ground, on your back with your knees bent. And what I want you to first do is I want you to initiate as if you're going to try and hold back your pee. Yes, hold back your pee. And what you should feel as you're trying to do this is that there is some sort of sensation, maybe like a pulling sensation that's happening in between your sit bones. And you also may notice that there's an elevation of your testicles as you start to do this. The key here is that you've located the pelvic floor muscles if you can feel this. But what people don't do correctly, and this is what the research shows, is they end up compensating with a lot of other muscles that they shouldn't be, such as their inner thighs, their abdominal muscles, as well as their gluteal muscles. So if you're noticing while you're doing this exercise that you're pulling in and squeezing your inner thighs, or you're really contracting those abdominal muscles or the big glute muscles in the back, then you're probably compensating, and you need to really focus in on just between the sit bones. Now, as you do this exercise, you can hold it a little longer, you can do several repetitions of them, but really the key here is you want to locate them and you want to know that you're isolating these muscles. Now that you've learned how to isolate and really locate the pelvic floor muscles, you can't really coordinate them well without its partner in crime, which is the diaphragm. So exercise number 2 is diaphragmatic breathing. And what we're gonna see here is that diaphragm is an umbrella type muscle that sits at the bottom of the rib cage, and it kind of is a circular umbrella that attaches to the spine and to the sternum in the front. Now, the reason why the diaphragm is really, really important is because the diaphragm and the pelvic floor muscles are kind of like synchronistic with each other. And so every single time you breathe in and out, the pelvic floor muscles actually respond to you breathing in and out. So if we look at this diagram, and this is the diaphragm, this is the pelvic floor muscles, every single time that you breathe in, your pelvic floor muscles have to expand. And every single time you breathe out, those pelvic floor muscles contract back to their relative resting states. And the reason why this is really, really important when it comes to sexual dysfunction is that oftentimes this breathing symbiotic relationship is disturbed in people with sexual performance issues. And so as they're breathing in, their pelvic floor isn't relaxing, and as they're breathing out, their pelvic floor isn't contracting correctly. So it's really, really important to get this relationship between breathing and the pelvic floor coordinated again, because this is what's going to prevent prevent premature ejaculation issues, as well as just preventing any sort of sexual erectile dysfunctions in the bedroom if this is due to any type of muscle imbalance. So, diaphragmatic breathing. So how are we going to accomplish this? I kind of like most people starting on the ground with their knees bent, just like in the previous position. I'd like you to place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. And in this exercise, we're simply just going to breathe in, trying to relax the hand that is on your chest, and you're really just trying to elevate your hand with the breath that you are taking in. So what you should feel is that as you breathe in, your hand actually elevates up towards the ceiling. As you breathe out, your hand kind of flattens down towards the ground, all the while keeping your chest quiet. Now, as you breathe in, I also want you to think relaxing the pelvic floor as if you're just gonna initiate peeing. And then as you breathe out and that stomach flattens, you should notice that your pelvic floor goes back to a resting state. So this way, as you breathe in, your pelvic floor is expanding, and as you breathe out, the pelvic floor is going back to its resting state. I want you to try maybe 10 of these and go ahead and get that coordination happening again. Now in the next exercise, we're gonna talk about the third really important player to really get that powerful erection and strength for performance in the bedroom. So the third muscle that is super important is the transverse abdominal muscles. Now, you have 4 muscle layers in your abdomen. You've got your rectus, your obliques, and the deepest layer, which is the next exercise we're gonna work on, which is called your transverse abdominis. Now, the reason why this is really, really important is because a lot of us know that the core is really the heart of where a lot of stability comes in, not only for like your back and your hips, but also for your sexual performance. The reason why is because the pelvic floor muscles that we talked about in the first exercise with the Kegel are actually indirectly connected to these transverse abdominal muscles. And as you get that pelvic floor stronger, your transverse abdominal muscles are kind of like the power punch to really improve that overall strength in your core, which is then going to enhance performance in the bedroom. So the next exercise, number 3, is the transverse abdominal muscles. So with this exercise, again, we're gonna be back on our backs. We're gonna go ahead and bend our knees. And what I want you to do is take a breath in, just like you did in the previous exercise with the diaphragmatic breathing. And as you slowly, and the key here is slowly, breathe out, I want you to make a sound over like 6 to 10 seconds. And as you make that S sound as you're breathing out, I want you to imagine that between your pelvic bones, which are the bones that are located right in the front of your pelvis, that they're slowly kind of coming together towards the midline. If you make that S sound and you do this slowly, you'll notice that there is almost like a flattening effect deep down in your abdomen. And as you are doing this S sound towards the end of your exhalation, you should also notice that there's a pull on your pelvic floor. So this is where you're gonna notice that connection between the pelvic floor and the transverse abdominis. And the great thing about this is when you start to do these exercises together along with the breathing exercise that I taught you previously, then you're gonna start noticing this connection between those deep pelvic floor muscles, the abdominal muscles, and your breathing, which is just gonna make that contraction and erection even more powerful and strong. And as you work on these muscles, you're gonna start building up some endurance. But now we're gonna go to the next 4th muscle, which is the low back muscles, which are called your multifidi muscles. These are super, super important because this is going to be the 4th muscle that is just going to complete the picture and create a nice, kind of like a girdle from the front of the abdomen and all the way to the back. And the reason why that's important, because it's kind of like the tire of the corset, where it ties everything together in the back. It pulls on your pelvic floor, creating a better, stronger core, as well as, again, you got it, better performance in the bedroom and better endurance. So with this exercise, the 4th exercise is going to be the bird dog. In my experience of 20 years working as a pelvic floor physical therapist, most people do this exercise incorrectly. So let's get doing this correct. We're gonna be in a tabletop position. Go ahead and place your hands underneath your shoulders, shoulder width apart. Your knees are underneath your hips, hip width apart. And we're gonna find your spinal neutral. With this exercise, you're gonna go ahead and arch your back, and then you're gonna flatten into a reverse arched back. And then you're gonna find the middle of those two. We wanna keep your spine very, very neutral when you do this exercise. Now, as you breathe in and you breathe out, we're gonna wanna connect to those transverse abdominal muscles. You'll probably feel your pelvic floor muscles kicking in as well. Once you have maybe a 30% connection, I want you to go ahead and lift your right arm up and forward in front of you, maintaining that spinal neutral and not losing it. And then once you have that balance, go ahead and lift the opposite leg behind you, keeping a nice straight line between your arm, your back, and your leg. Hold that for a couple of seconds. Go ahead and bring it slowly back down into its resting position, and then go ahead and alternate and do the opposite side in the same way. Again, you can go back and forth, nice and slow, really maintaining that spinal neutral over about 10 repetitions or so. Once you have these muscles stronger, now you should start to see that, hey, I'm starting to feel the low back, the abdominals, the pelvic floor, and I understand how it's connected with my breathing. So now that you have these 4 exercises tied in together, you should really start noticing that your pelvic floor muscles actually start to get stronger over time. Some men might be having additional problems that requires further attention. So check out our playlist for other common dysfunctions that can lead to sexual performance issues. And if you're needing more individualized attention, then we have our link below for 60-minute consultations or any of our online programs that can help fix common pelvic floor issues.